Hello, and welcome back to the Silt versus A Psalm of Flesh and Change. It's been a few weeks since we last got together, so just to remind us where we're at, after both successfully solving the mystery at Vernon's Lodge high in the mountains, which of course was Frank Idle and Dr. Nim Harrow, to resolving the matter of the Skyward Sprawl, which was Nora Kane and Vitria Stahl. As we left things off last time, both of your groups were heading off onto the journey move. So Dr. Nim and Frank had actually taken a bit of a detour to investigate a custom move, which Alex rather wonderfully came up with, called the Pilgrimage to Hiram. So just to remind us, across the channel, the ruins of the Hengefeld Institute for the Research of Unobservable Matter, a vast pre-war facility that once hosted the greatest minds from Nesh and beyond. Laboratories, power stations, staff dormitories, alpine gardens, and more have succumbed to the ravages of time, but not nature. Nothing grows here. For although it is invisible, something permeates the air that is anathema to the growth of local flora. Turn back, this is not a place of honor. And so we had some input from everyone about the nature of this horrific irradiated place where the two of you now find yourselves standing. Meanwhile, Vitria and Nora, heading into the town of System Mauer Ward, your one remaining assignment location, found the road blocked by the Godshrikes, a rival group hired by the government to seek out rogue deities and angels and saints and effectively exterminate them. You were introduced to their leader, Captain Joe Lynch, who pretty openly threatened you into working for him. Your riposte to this was for Vitria to summon up the power of the Skyward Sprawl, concrete of the road erupting upwards violently, and you got the hell out of Dodge very promptly. So as we pick things off with Vitria and Nora, I think the two of them will be very much just sitting by the roadside, the van engine maybe smoking a little bit from its exertions, ready to finish off your journey move. So 2 journey moves is where we'll pick things off, and then we will introduce your one new assignment that you have. But just before we do that, I think everyone apart from Dr. Nim got an advancement last session. So do we just want to let everyone know, what did we pick?
I can start. I chose I chose an additional faith move, and I picked He of Many Faces. In your countless performances for the Watcher, you've played every role imaginable. Anytime you attempt to act under a false persona, name the character you're playing and roll with presence. And there is an option that this persona will be recorded as a new side character if it rolls a 10 plus, or if you roll a miss, except in the case of a miss, the side character believes you must die in order for them to live.
Very nice, thank you. David?
The advancement I grabbed was converting Peter, our sacrificial convict from Winter's Spite, who Frank freed, into a recurring side character.
Very exciting. Okay, can't wait to see how Peter shows up again. And James, what did Vitria pick?
Picked a faith sheet move called Consult the Plans, which means I now have, in addition to my hard hat, an enormous prior marked architectural drawing in my altar. And like the hat, I can mark my track instead of the diagram, using it for advantage. And if I discover a clue using the diagram, I can find extra clues if I mark the box to not mark the diagram. And if I do it twice, I get a conspiracy clue once per session.
Very exciting. And I think you are on 5 conspiracy clues, so 3 more and we arrive at the confrontation. Awesome. All sounds very cool. Well, let us open then on Hiram and the pilgrimage of Dr. Nim Harrow and Frank Idle. And Dr. Harrow, for the sake of Frank, I'd hope maybe that you've stopped the car a little way out from this horrific irradiated temple, but have you? what is the situation as we open our story today?
Yeah, I actually like that a lot because I was thinking about like slightly retconning where we left off in like the thick of it and kind of like going back to the perimeter because I kind of like that a lot. I think we see the car park by a bit of overgrown chain link fence with rusted over signs of like warning from the CLS and it's just Nim, kind of just getting out of the car, securing like a hiker's backpack to him. He's just kind of like looking out into that wilderness where you can kind of vaguely see the overgrowth of, or not necessarily the overgrowth, just the ruins of the Hiram facility, considering that it's just a lot of concrete and waste. And he
Yeah,
says, go ahead.
I just think Frank's like kind of points to some of the signage. Uh, well, it says that this is a pretty dangerous area, but this looks okay, just abandoned.
The signs are correct, my friend. It is an extremely dangerous place. But you will be okay, provided that you stay by my side. I have spent a lot of time researching the Hengefeld Institute, and I know pathways, safe pathways. There are people who blunder, not aware of what lies here, of what permeates the very air and matter around them. Things do not adhere to everyday assumptions of safety here. But I know the path. Or at least, I think I know the path. Pretty sure.
Well, I think you're pretty sure is better than most people's, certainly. So I'll follow tight close behind.
He pulls the long collapsing antenna out of a clunky yellow box device that he clicks some like meters on. It's not quite a Geiger counter. It doesn't do the little crackling kind of sounds, but it does begin to like make these like soft kind of like humming little like rising whir like frequency waves kind of coming in. They just move around and he begins to hike forward, stepping over the bit of fallen chain link fence into the area.
A bit of visual detail I want to add to that box, to the intensity of the signal that's coming in along it. It's making the noise. I think it has one of those just like absolutely comically oversized, like hazy lensed lights. Probably like either like a yellow or an orange, that glows a little bit in accordance too. So when the signal's like really strong, it's brighter. When it's weaker, it's less. Like you might see on a older bit of technology like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think we come to the edge of the moat that Ryan described was here last time, the big dug trench that like encompasses the land itself pulled away, which is such a cool detail. This deep bottomless drop. He looks over the edge slightly and like looks down the way, and we can see the solitary rope bridge that someone put across it, and he looks at his watch and says,
The security saints should not be here for some time. I think that is plenty to cross.
Security saints?
Yes,
Frank
the
looks around
CLS
nervously.
The CLS does not really want people to come here. Be on the lookout. They are gaseous.
Oh. How would I see them then?
Ah, you would have been a good scientist in another life.
he begins to walk
I
towards
think-
the rope bridge, not elaborating further.
Yeah, Frank follows you closely, but I think he takes that as like the nicest compliment you've ever given him.
he does continue after a pause, just saying
Truth be told, I don't actually know much more about them. I have never seen them myself. I just know that they are somewhere between creature and machine, not particularly either. And that they are gaseous, as I said. I don't know what that means.
I've never seen a gaseous machine before, but I trust I don't want to. So I'll follow with you.
All things in our world are machines, Frank. It just depends on how you perceive them. Machines aren't always just pistons and gears, wires and circuitry. Machines, our bodies are machines. Our bodies have functions like a factory, like a great reactor that churns within the very matter of our life. If you really get into the minutiae of matter itself, Frank, you will understand that everything, nothing is exempt from the domains of logic and behavior, except until they tend to break down. But
you say nothing escapes logic and behavior, but if we're all made of tiny machines or what have you, and Frank kind of looks both ways, like he's trying to avoid, the prying eyes or something here in this desolate place where there is nothing to be seen. And he looks back to you. What are the gods made of?
that is a question for scientists in different fields than myself. But, well, if I had to hazard any sort of guess,
he says, like stepping onto the very sway kind of rope bridge and holding both of the sides for a little bit of support as he takes it one step at a time.
I would say gods still are machines, and they might just be, well, some gods we understand pretty well, some we do not. But you know the old adage, Frank, a god must feed, and a god must be fed. Indeed, machines require some sort of power, be it fuel or something else entirely. We are all machines. Even the gods themselves operate to some degree of that same logic. They require food. And sometimes, as we have seen many times before, machines can be refitted, painted, given new form, given new purpose. Many gods have done this before, yes? Many gods have been transformed from one thing into another, the old into the new. I mean, many of our most widely worshipped faiths had in their earliest days entirely different forms.
I suppose I've never quite thought about it that way before. Machines can also be leveraged for quite terrible things, and I suppose that too is true.
Another way to think of it that might be useful, Frank. All things are machines, and all machines are built from composite pieces. Many different things compose the single whole unit. And when you continue to break down those individual machines into their smaller components, their smaller contributing machines, until you get to the most minuscule of their fundamental being, those things, the true elements of matter, perhaps they are machines themselves, but they are the fabric from which all other things stem. They are the only thing, in my estimation, that stands above the rest of our creation. If only they were more than small gods. If only they were more than the fickle things we observe in glass tubes. They don't wield necessarily the might of the Saint Electric. Not yet, at least, but perhaps they never will.
Well, perhaps like us, it is in their joining together that true power can be acquired.
You are a smart man, Frank Idle, and I am pleased to have known you. And he continues walking across the bridge.
Very nice.
Frank does
I'm
not
gonna.
know what to do with this wash of compliments.
I think it's a lovely place to just. I guess we could kind of cut to you maybe in the very heart of the temple, which I think Alex you described for us last time. Having had this heartfelt conversation, gazing up at the wreck of this desolate place. I think very much from that conversation, if you're happy to, you can certainly both clear a condition if you wish.
Yeah, I actually have an
Oops.
idea
Go on.
for that. And actually a quick question, because the nature of this advance I took is that since it says you may return there after completing an assignment and choose one, unmark an item from an altar, discover a clue for any ongoing assignment, or so there's options. Is that in effect now, or will that be for future assignment resolutions that I can use that?
So I read it, and it read a little bit like it was saying you can return there, but this pilgrimage feels purposeful, and I don't want to diminish that. So I'm happy to say either you can get the use of that now, or because it's not necessarily that useful since you have no active assignments other than the one that's coming in now. I am very happy to say instead, if you want, there is something, a relic of your faith deep beneath the vaults of Hiram. If you wish, you can roll to descend and see if you can safely retrieve it without the security saints coming after you. So you can either make use of the journey move benefit now, or I'm very happy for you to venture below to get some kind of special goodie out of this.
I'm going to make a note of that, because that might be a thing I do in the future when I return here.
Cool.
But I will, if it's okay, I think I'll just unmark an item on my altar.
Please do.
And as for my condition, at least what Nim does when we arrive in this space with that central pit pool of swirling compounds amidst what looks like a reactor sea mine kind of amalgamation, is that he like kneels next to the pool, almost like in like supplication and prayer, and he is going to take out a small like little penknife, and he just places a very delicate like little cut at his forehead where the currently invisible prayer mark tattoo would be, and just kind of like let some of his blood drip 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 into the swirling pool of chemicals. And this act of bleeding, giving to the convocation, I'm going to clear side effects may include.
And
Very
I
nice,
went
thank
ahead
you.
and cleared one of Time's servants, given that threat has been superseded by our enemies. So
Makes total sense to me. And as for stumbling on a clue, what I'll suggest is we'll bring in the assignment, and then obviously you were very free to, perhaps you've heard something of the town of Welkin's Vigil. So yeah, just give us a second, and then I think you can definitely stumble on a clue straight away relating to that. Because in fact, I think as you stand in the heart of the temple, we already indicated in the journey scene that actually power is still on in some parts of this laboratory. And the two of you just start to hear a very gentle whirring, and then tap, 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 the sound of a telegram apparently still running somewhere in the temple. And let's just take that as a chance to hop right over to the roadside just outside of Siston Maura Ward. The van, as I said, maybe the engine kind of smoking blackly a little bit. Vitria and Nora, you have successfully made your escape from the rivals. However, the town you hoped to save is lost to you. How are you feeling?
I think, as you said, the engine is smoking. I think Nora's kind of got the hood of the van opened up and is poking around trying to fix whatever she's managed to break and just cursing under her breath the entire time. Yeah, she's not a happy camper.
I think as Nora's looking at the van, the back doors of the van swing open and Vitria climbs out. And you wouldn't know that they'd been in a building, been through all of the horrible things that happened during the Skyward Sprawl. But she's basically like changed and looks like she's about to go into a boardroom again. You know, she's got this kind of concrete grey pantsuit on and like just looks perfect again. But you might notice that her like lipstick and fingernails are this kind of concrete grey color. And if you look a bit too closely at her fingertips, you notice that it's not just her it's not nail varnish. Her fingertips are now also concrete grey. And she sort of hides them in the pockets and goes up and says, "Well, they were dreadful men, weren't they?"
Yeah, you could say that. Nora like pulls something out of the engine. It's like, I know, something with screws poking out of it. She kind of twists, turns it, looks at it, throws it over her shoulder. What are we gonna do now?
You insult the Petropator or something. You know what they're like. They have all these prayer marks hidden in the vehicle so that if you say anything libelous about the faith, your car just breaks down immediately.
I think we can trust them to know that I'm not trying to curse them out. She pulls out a spark plug that is literally sparking. We've got more of these in the back. Could you go get one, please?
I think Vitria comes back with them like like sort of gingerly holding them and they're saying, "Oh, something's leaking back there. They're all covered in grease."
Yeah, they're supposed to be. Nora takes 2 of the spark plugs. Well, if we can't head back, then... Man, do you know what the name is of... No, that won't work. I don't know. Where do you think we should go?
But we better find Frank and Dr. Harrow wherever they've ended up. It's all very messy. Just give me a blank piece of drafting paper and a draftsman's table any day. And she looks a bit kind of dreamy at that prospect.
Oh. Stage lights and a curtain call. That's where I'd rather be. Nora slams the front of the van closed and then kind of hesitates and then just gives it a pat like, there. I promise I'm not mad at you. Okay, that should do it. So what, we head for the mountains or?
Suppose maybe we have to find a relentless rider outpost and see if any mail has come for us from Van Horn. Maybe the bureau will tell us where to go. And she's sitting on this like lump of concrete, sort of out idly, like, sort of running her fingers over the concrete, and says, your God in a just world should be very pleased with you. You played your part to perfection back there.
Nora kind of runs a hand through her hair, like, yeah, I mean, I guess so. You've got a lizard on your shoulder.
Dreadful. Oh, get away from me, you beast.
Uh,
Very
okay,
nice. I think
let's... Oh. Yeah, Nora's gonna kind of... Yeah. Okay, opens one of the van doors, takes out like a bottle of water, tosses it to Vitria. 5-minute break, and then let's see if there's any mail waiting for us. You know, oh, come on, brain. I'm blanking on the term. Something that moves a plot ahead is called...
A MacGuffin?
That works.
A plot device.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some sort of plot device or whatever.
Perfect. I think before we get a plot device, would either of you two like to clear a condition?
Yeah, I think Vitria is sitting on this lump of concrete will notice that at some time long ago it was part of a building and whispers to it as Nora's not looking. We did well, you old bastard. We brought this tower to an end. Will you let me go now?
Very nice. So I'm guessing that is going to be Vitria clearing. Which condition is that going to be?
I think I'm just going to say that I don't consider myself or Nora to be a disappointment.
Very fair. What about you, Nora?
Yeah, I think I am going to clear a disappointment because, like Vitria said, Nora played her part probably as well as her god wanted her to.
I think that's fair. And also, it's a murderous, murderous condition. So good to get rid of.
And also, I want to keep Shadow of the Architect because I feel like that'll be fun.
I think that will be fun. Okay, thank you. Well, as you are doing that, and I think maybe it is, Nora, right after you've said maybe there'll be some mail. There are gods other than the Watcher that have a flair for the dramatic, because as you say these words, you do hear a very low rumble of thunder in the sky. You look up, and then when you look back down, there is in fact a rider on the road in front of you. Aviator's face kind of shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. And the thing that the rider is riding, it's quite hard in the gathering shadows to tell if it's a horse or a motorcycle or something in between. The lizard that was crawling on Vitria's shoulder, its black eyes just reflect the lifeless black aviator glasses as they stare back at you for a moment. And then the rider reaches into their satchel, pulls out an envelope and tosses it down on the ground in front of you. And the noise of the rumbling thunder becomes the roar of the motorcycle's engines as they turn and speed away down the road. And huge shout out to the Relentless Rider faith sheet that we were homaging, that James rather lovely brought up. It's a great faith sheet from the contest that the Gauntlet just ran. So yeah, you have lying on the road in front of you a brown envelope marked with the biased stamp. And as you pull it out, we might just fade back into Hiram as Dr. Harrow and Frank peer over this letter that is coming out on the telegram slowly. And there's a single sheet of paper on top of what appears to be another assignment case file. And it just says, "You are in grave danger. Lay low. Make for Welkin's Vigil. Contact me when all is well." And the scribbled signature of your supervisor. So we are opening up The Sleepless Warden. The summary: the distant town of Welkin's Vigil, perched on the northeastern cliffs of the peninsula across the nameless channel from the distant Linger Straits. It once served as a military outpost in anticipation of a war that never reached the peninsula directly. Local historians will tell you that in centuries past, it was the site of a stone fort where chieftains kept watch along the coast for incoming raiders. Anyone who's vacationed in Welkin's Vigil will tell you it's a lovely town with scenic views and quaint locals who are proud of their history. So it's an unusual location for the Custodians to be sent on assignment. It seems that an iron cormorant, a decommissioned battle saint, which until recently stood on display at a veterans memorial in the town square, has been activated and now patrols the outskirts of town. Some folks call it the Sleepless Warden. Security briefings with the Peninsulan Armed Forces confirm that the Battle Saint was fully disarmed years ago and has no operational capacity. An expert from the Institute for Theological Research and Innovation has suggested that underlying divine influences may have played a role. It's a fact that the population of Welkin's Vigil is largely composed of veterans and families displaced by prior wars, all of them having served war gods in the past. If historical records can be trusted to remain unaltered by the slew of modern propaganda gods, it has also been claimed that Welkin's Vigil was once a pre-modern fort built over countless burial mounds of distant warrior clans. Perhaps some ancient god has been stirred by an atmosphere of perceived threats and hostility to outsiders, or perhaps the residents themselves, driven by a growing paranoia about attacks from abroad, have found a way to awaken it through acts of unsanctioned worship. To complicate matters further, the town itself is recognized as a site of historic and divine significance by the Central Cottage government, which is monitoring recent events via the Welkin Historical Interest Preservation Society, WIPS, to ensure that no historically significant features of the town are damaged further. In particular, the Custodians have been informed that the town is sentimental to an important adjudicator who vacationed there as a child. This assignment must be resolved with a more cautious approach. I think as you're peering down at the sheet of paper, let's go with Nora. Nora, what details of the report make you certain that a god now animates the Battle Saint?
I think we've got an eyewitness, air quotes, eyewitness account from a tourist who was run out of town by the thing. Air quotes because he was probably drunk at the time, but he reported that I'm literally picturing the Iron Giant right now. So that's what we're gonna go with, I guess. That the saint while it was literally running him out of town, spoke to him in quotes, something like one of them I guess horror movies, something like one of them horror movies, just words that a human couldn't understand.
Very interesting. So he heard it speak in its own language to him, as if trying to convey a message. Is that amazing? I love it. And just I love the Iron Giant concept, but I want to try and like weird this up a little bit. So let's, David, as Frank looks at the photograph of the Sleepless Warden, can you describe some, perhaps it has a head that is animalistic in some form. Can you give a little twist on what Nora has set up in the appearance of the saint?
Yeah, I think that there's a whole section of it that was the plinth upon which it was standing in the city. Like this Battle Saint had been decommissioned and kind of converted into a statue, I think. And that plinth upon which it had stood, I think maybe this Battle Saint had like lost part of, like if we are saying it's vaguely humanoid shaped, like it had lost part of an arm or something as part of not even part, they claim it was part of the war, but as we know, the war didn't quite reach those parts of the shore. So it was actually probably some kind of either manufacturing incident or mechanical failure. But either way, that bit has now since been replaced by a like large, almost club-like appendage of warped concrete and stone that is the plinth it used to stand on, that it has essentially like converted that bit of the terrain into part now of its body.
I love that. So we can already see how this thing might be very, very dangerous with this huge rebar club, essentially. Very cool. Thank you. Alrighty. Well, I think both of you are able, if you wish, to stumble on a clue. Just to remind you, your clue cannot answer a question directly. Your first question is going to be a simple opener clue, which is, has the warden been awakened intentionally or accidentally? This will then unlock the next appropriate question to lead you to figure out how to resolve the assignment. So you are very welcome, however, to invent a clue of your own. Perhaps it appears in the report. Perhaps it is something that you've already heard about Welkin's Vigil. Over to you. Let's start with Frank and Dr. Harrow. What clue do you stumble upon?
I have an idea for a clue, and see what, David, you might want to add to it. Because this might be a very interesting complication right out of the gate, is that if Welkin's Vigil is on the peninsulan side of things, it would be most odd indeed if one were to find like schematics or like other like scientific draw-ups for these types of battle saint at Hiram, which is in the Linger Straits. So I'm thinking that the design of this iron cormorant, there are records of its composition at Hiram.
I love that. And the only thing I'll add is that there is a name on those documents. So that might be something we could tie to later once we have some suspects and other stuff.
I think that's great.
Adore that. That is incredible. Okay, so clue is schematics relating to Hiram and CLS. A name is upon them. Fantastic. Vitri and Nora, what clue do you stumble upon as you pour through the assignment report?
I have an idea, maybe. There's like a map, a topographical map of Welkin's Vigil. And maybe it's like, it looks like it's sort of warped into the shape of a sort of jagged Fibonacci spiral, like the map.
I think someone's annotated the map in like colored pencil.
Maybe the spiral's in colored pencil as well, and like we didn't see it happen, but someone like has just like jaggedly drawn it and then done all these like notes and weird sort of scribblings.
Lovely. I've got annotated map with mysterious notes and colored pencil spirals / scribblings. Very cool. I think then nothing left to do but to open upon the town square of a quaint town to the north of the country. There's a few tourist shops selling postcards, ice creams, quaint cobblestone sidewalks, and in the very center of the small town of Welkin's Vigil, there is just a traffic roundabout and a small mound where the concrete plinth has just been erupted. A faint kind of dirt trail is still visible, chunks of pavement scattering in a path leading out of the town away into the hills, orange traffic cones surrounding the devastation on either side. Paint the scene for me, folks. At a glance, the locals appear to be working around this obstacle without too much difficulty. How? As from the west and the east, a rather battered van and a car with an entirely smashed windshield approach and arrive at the center of the town, almost kind of in perfect unison. As all four of you arrive on the scene together, how can you tell that the locals are actually quite agitated by the loss of the sleepless warden, but doing their best to avoid showing it? How can you tell they're actually quite agitated, but doing their best to avoid showing it?
I think there's a father with his kid. Kid is maybe 8 or 9, and the child is just standing there, almost like they've dropped an ice cream, but there is no ice cream, and they're just like tears running down their face. They're sniffling, and the father has a very grim expression, but he's like got his hand on his kid's shoulder, like, buck up, kid. Like this is a loss for all of us sort of vibes. Just there off to the side.
There's a man on like a little like front porch sipping some coffee from like a dented thermos, and is very stoic and cool faced, and you can look at their hands though, and he is gripping the like iron railing like so tight, he's like white knuckling it, and you can almost just hear the way that the skin just rubs against the metal, and he's just tense as he just kind of is looking out.
I think there's a greengrocer's store facing the square, and the greengrocer's assistant is chalking up all the fruit and the produce, but it keeps putting like greengrocer's apostrophes in, so like apple, comma S and things like that. And the store owner comes out and looks uneasily at the hole in the roundabout and says, and it starts like berating the assistant for his grammar, and then they get into like a sort of low key like scrap over something really trivial, because they both look quite agitated and stressed by having to stare at the hole all day.
I think as people are like driving through this roundabout, cars are kind of moving a bit jerkily, like they have to keep correcting their steering because they're used to having this statue. I don't know, what side of the road are they driving on? Left or right?
I mean, we've said pavement already, so I think it's gonna be left.
Okay. So they're like used to having this statue like close to their left, and they kind of have to keep moving the steering wheel so they don't like drive off the road or drive like into the next lane. Like it's just throwing people off that it's missing.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, I think Nora and Vitria, you pull up in your van, Frank and Dr. Harrow in your car, and you see these wonderful little vignettes. The greengrocer berating his assistant, the dad trying to get his son to buck up, the man sitting with his coffee, observing these drivers who are slightly kind of skewing across the road. And as all of you step out of your cars, perhaps for one moment, none of that matters because you see each other. Your comrades in arms apart for far too long. What happens? Who reacts first?
I think Frank like throws his hands up and says, "We've got to stop meeting like this." He looks like overtly cheerful, the best mood he's been in days. And he like runs over to the van to go and say hello to Nora and Vitria.
Hello, Frank. Have you been being helpful to Dr. Harrow?
Well, he said I would make a good scientist, so I think so. How are you all? You all look well, you look in spick and span. Nora, how are you in there?
Surviving. Glad to see you're not frozen. How did, she kind of gestures, that whole party go?
Well, and Frank kind of casts a quick glance back at Dr. Harrow. Well, I can't say that we nailed it first try, but we did resolve it. The most of the people are safe, and a bit of a conspiracy was uncovered. It really was quite a time up there on the mountain.
Nim comes like walking up now, a little bit more casually, hands affixed to the strap of his bag, as he looks slightly over the rim of his sunglasses at Vitria and just says,
"There was a gentleman I would have been most interested to see you interact with, Vitria. He was, are you familiar with the Slag Prince, Ray Ghibli?"
He's sort of like the mafia don of my religion. My family tends to pretend not to be associated with him.
You
My
don't,
father,
well,
my father would have done almost anything to never be caught in a room with him.
well, then I have very good news for your father.
Oh, he could use some good news. He's been missing for some time, Dr.
Yes.
Harrow.
Oh, I apologize, I did not know. Anyway, Regibly is now dead.
I
Well,
believe that
allegedly,
is a
we
net.
never did find the body. There was a scream though, and he was drug out into the snow. If he's probably dead.
He's
It's
most
true.
likely dead.
He was a dreadful little man. You missed a divinely induced musical interlude, courtesy of Nora.
Nora kind of takes a little bow.
I think that silence is absolutely diegetic. It's just there's one doesn't really know how to respond to that.
I think after a pause, Frank will say, "Well, was it a good musical number or
I'm not known for my taste in music, but I think it went pretty well. Let's just say the only reason that we're alive is because it was dramatically appropriate for us to be alive.
Most interesting. Not to change the topic so hastily, but I am assuming that you also received word of our failings in Malreward, or rather how we have been usurped in that regard.
We were directly informed by a dreadful man leading a gang of equally dreadful men from a variety of ragtag faiths who waylaid us on the road to Malreward.
I suppose that is the price to pay for wasted time.
Ironic. Anyway,
Indeed.
do
So
you
go ahead.
You got
Okay, then I will. Did your briefing also tell you that you were in great danger?
Nora kind of digs through the papers. Not that I remember. We got a map. She kind of shows Frank and Dr. Harrow the Fibonacci spiral map.
Someone likes coloring.
I can see that. That is the most interesting map, and that is the natural landform.
Looks like.
I suppose it will bear further investigation. But yes, apparently, Mr. Idle and I received a communique of great danger, and that we were just needing to lay low. So, very auspicious that this assignment is wanting us to be more cautious. For whatever reason, apparently there is heat at our backs.
do you think perhaps we've been a little bit too brazen up until now?
Frank,
Perhaps
we burned down a
should.
hotel.
That's true. We did do that.
You brought down another building? Oh, that was not Nora's accent. Goodness.
The surprise. Maybe this whole time Nora has been putting on an accent. That's like part of Nora's character. And for a moment it slipped through.
We haven't exactly been discreet, have we? And I'm afraid that I think it's caught up with us.
Well, no glasses to toast with here, but perhaps we should raise one to a new us. We'll be a little bit more careful here. You know, I hear this place has a lovely community. Perhaps we should, you know, make an effort to connect with them and perhaps even better understand what they would like to see happen here. There's no better way to take care of it than with the locals, I imagine, I figure.
Yes, I would like to get acquainted with this community, at least to find something to pass the time, if nothing else, as a start. I find that I work best when I have taken a moment to catch my breath, to steady my mind, preferably with a cup of something nice and hot.
The Watcher, it is said, is not the only god with a flair for the dramatic, but perhaps it is just random chance that while Frank is talking about the friendly local community, all of you just feel the wind changes and a sudden sou'wester comes blowing in through the town. The dad and his child kind of go scurrying on towards their car. The man with his coffee kind of raises his eyes to the sky and goes back under his porch. All around you, shutters are closed. Residents scurry out from their stone houses to collect up their laundry. The street is very rapidly becoming deserted as you feel the first spots of rain fall all around you. But as all of you are gazing at the changing atmosphere, you can see around you a bit more clearly. So beyond the town square itself, Welkin's Vigil, masterful stonework, rather beautiful old farmhouses now converted, sitting behind thick hedges surrounded by sturdy saplings, well sheltered from the wind that now blows down the streets. Beyond, to the south, you can see the creeping hills, beautiful climbing steps that end in sheer coastal cliffs, and upon them stand towering windmill saints keeping watch, their turbine arms and propeller faces creaking in the wind. Out in the hills, you can just make out the shape of what appears to be a small domed temple. Rather closer to home, right here in the heart of the town, you can make out, just sort of sitting on almost on the shoreline itself, a refurbished old guard tower, which now has a rather jolly sign hanging beneath it, which says the Third Watch. It appears to be a pub or a bar of some kind. Everyone else is fleeing the streets. There is just one man, a kite seller, standing on the far side of the square with a rather large grin, now desperately trying to keep control of his kites as the gust threatens to carry them away from him. From her, sorry, she's a home.
Frank, seeing anyone who's struggling with something and not having other pressing concerns, will immediately cross the street to go and try to help them get those kites tied down.
Fantastic. I mean, it's not a huge risk, but there is a risk here involved, and I think it's about time we had a roll. So, veiled move. What are you afraid will happen if you fail to help her get the kites under control?
There is a storm coming in. I think Frank's deepest fear is that these kites are going to be up too high when lightning may come a striking, and that would put both of us in danger.
That is so much more severe than I could have anticipated. Wonderful. Yeah, there is a risk that the storm is coming and someone's going to get struck by lightning. Okay. If you wish to go ahead, please go ahead and roll. I imagine vitality is the obvious one, unless you can come up with another rationale for trying to struggle to reel in these kites.
I figure vitality's good. It's one of Frank's better stats anyway.
Okay, let's go for it.
It's 5 on the dice, and let me double check my stat. Vitality is +1, so that is a 6. That is still a miss.
That is still a miss. I mean, you said it, so I think what is going to happen very much is as you grab onto the lines alongside this woman, both of you struggling together to reel in the kites, lightning comes crashing down. And for a moment, you just hear the thunderclap sounding very much like the roar of a motorcycle. It just lances down the reel and hits both of you. She stumbles back, kind of hair on end, much like you, Frank, sizzling as the two of you hit the pavement together. I'm going to give Frank a condition, obviously. Blessed by lightning, does that sound good?
Yeah, sure, it's a blessing.
You can, of course, write a verse.
Oh, I can, but I kind of... This seems like a fitting bad start to this to this threat. I like it.
Perfect. Well, Frank, you are sizzling, singed. You can smell burning flesh, but you just sort of stumble up from the pavement. The kite seller, her eyes closed, is splayed across the floor, apparently unconscious. What are we doing?
If Frank is still conscious and they seem worse for the wear, he'll, I think, noting the very charred, now like still gently falling like ash bits of kite, nothing more secure there. He'll go over and kind of pat their cheek. Hey, you all right? Anyone have some smelling salts or? I don't know what to do with somebody who's been struck by lightning.
I think the generally accepted advice is to go to a hospital.
Well, as the only doctor here, I guess, even though I'm not a doctor of medicine, I think Nim will still rush forward to, first of all, pick her up and, nods his head towards the third watch. And that seems to be the nearest public type of building, at least with the storm outside. And he says,
First step, perhaps we get out of the immediate elements before we decide how to best help her.
curses, and then begins to want to move her unconscious form to safety to the third watch.
Vitria shrugs and says, do I look like a pox monk? My only catechism of my faith was they should have worn protective equipment.
Well,
You
imagine
come
you
up-
grumbling this as you trail after everyone else, Vitria.
Yeah.
I think Nora's going to help Dr. Harrow carry the kite seller towards the pub.
Awesome. Yeah, I think as you knock in through the doors, we can imagine that actually quite a number of people have run in here to gather for shelter. So it's quite bustling. The dad and his son are in here. Most of the clientele appear to be rather elderly, retirees, some of them still wearing the veterans' medals. There is a bit of a kind of a collective shock as they turn around and see you coming through carrying the kite seller. But then the man behind the bar, he just goes, "Oh, Shay, Gust and Gale got you down again, have they? Oh, bring her in. It'll be all right. Let me get the whiskey." Moments later, the bartender, voluminous feathery hair, this man. He's got crow's feet beneath his eyes, but a rather cheerful, wicked laugh. And he just comes out with the whiskey and props it up beneath the nose of the kite seller. She oh, that was a big one. Oh, not giving me the good stuff, eh, Valentine? It's all right. It's better than nothing. She just sinks it in one go and hands it back. Another. And then she seems to notice that she is in the arms of Nora and Dr. Harrow. She says, "Oh, sorry about that. Oh, Gust and Gale do get rather playful. Oh, that really put my shoulder out."
Are you quite all right, miss? You were struck by lightning.
It's the price you pay for being a kite seller. It's all right. You got to take the wind with the downside, don't you?
You are not unaccustomed to this? You have been struck before?
Yeah. Maybe once, twice a year it happens. It's fine. It's fine. You look, if you're a kite seller and you're only outside in calm conditions, you're not going to sell many kites, aren't you? You've got to be able to show the merchandise when it's windy. So you got to take the rough with the smooth.
I see. Yes. Well, very glad that you are all right. Then you concerned us, but good.
She kind of rolls over, sees Frank, and just kind of claps one charred hand into his and says, "You tried to help me. I remember that one good turn and all that. Shaquan, if you need a discount on a kite, let me know. I can make it happen. All right. Thank you, Valentine."
Don't worry. You've already taught me something very wonderful from this experience. I now know that the way to treat a lightning strike is with whiskey, and he's like jotting this down in a notebook.
That's right. I'm living proof of that. I 3 glasses after a lightning strike, and that'll see you right. And she says 3 glasses very meaningfully, and the bartender rolls his eyes and goes to get the bottle for her. Meanwhile, I imagine, the veterans, the show's over, they're turning back to their games of cards, just getting on with things. And I think maybe we can bring in a bit of a paint the scene for the third watch. As the locals return to their conversations, some of them beneath beautiful paintings of decommissioned military vehicles, soldiers in rather old sepia photographs, perhaps even younger versions of the veterans who you see now muttering over their cards here, are portraited all across the walls. Paint the scene, folks. What perceived threats to their way of life do the locals in this pub discuss most heatedly? What perceived threats to their way of life do they discuss most heatedly?
Maybe you've got like one table in the corner of probably like the oldest veterans of the bunch who are grumbling about like this I guess maybe a school has gotten like computers and the internet for the first time, and they're all grumbling about like kids these days who are on the internets and wanting to like leave town and go see stuff that they've been told about on the internets.
I like have this idea where there's like the old guard of the town who are the more like nihilistic ones, and then there are the old guards who are the more like loyalist ones, where there's a frequent debate that when not if, when war comes to the peninsula and Welkin's Vigil is this front line against the CLS when they are attacked, there seems to be some heated disagreement about is the Welkin's Vigil going to be a barricade, or is it a sand trap? Is it like is the government of the peninsula going to like bolster, it's going to be like, they're going to hold the line, or it's like, or are they going to just abandon the town to just to fall to the CLS while they move more strategically? There seems to be this very heated debate of like, we got to stand for our own. The government's not going to back us. They would rather we'll just fall before. But people are like, no, of course we won't. The adjudicators will see us through. A lot of heated debates about that.
I actually think an extension of that is there's a contingent like off in the corner talking about how the younger generation has gone quite soft as it relates to the concept of war. They have less appetite for it, and they complain that the reason that is that they haven't had to experience it in the same way, and that lack of experience will leave them vulnerable, and they're worried about that vulnerability in Merrill, and I almost said it in Malreward, in Welkin's Vigil.
I think that a couple of the sort of historical society veterans who are interested in like, historical buildings and defensive architecture are talking about how the mortar of all the older buildings is rotting. And they say that as a sign of the moral rot of the youth. They're like, look, and one of them pokes their finger in between the stones. Is like, look at that, grumbling, soft like the hearts of these young whelps. And then rubs it between their fingertips and says, when the wingless fingers come, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to crumble just like that.
I adore that. Are those followers of the Slag King you recognize, Vitria, or is that another god of masonry?
No, I think they're just like NIMBY military veterans who are part of the committee that like is interested in historically accurate building techniques. So they're kind of like local history NIMBY nerd military veterans.
Awesome. Love it. So yeah, as the hubbub rises around all of you, those great perennial topics, young people, the internet, masonry and poor construction techniques, and the government, will they or will they not leave us to die? Wonderful. It's coming up to past. I'm going to suggest let's take our midway pause there if we're okay with it. See you back in 10 minutes. Lovely. Alrighty, so the four of you are standing, standing around Shay, the kite seller, who is now enjoying her third glass of whiskey as she gets back up to her feet. As we've mentioned, all these tables full of muttering retirees, playing dominoes, yammering on about the lies of the child and how young people today are too weak to survive a real war. You can see some stools at the bar where the bartender is serving for his many new guests and attendees. There's maybe one spare table that has 4 stools around it, and that appears to be because no one else wants to sit there. And that is where a rather tweedy-looking silver-haired gentleman is just sitting, reading a book and very gingerly sipping at a half a stout. Over to you.
Think, yeah, Nora's kind of side-eyeing Shay like, you really get struck by lightning that often? Like, really? And then she kind of turns to the bartender and is like, would it be possible to get, she kind of looks at Dr. Harrow. He says you wanted something hot. Don't suppose you have any coffee?
Yeah, sure. We got a cappuccino machine. It's a tourist town. We can do anything for you. What kind of coffee?
Oh, whatever you think a tourist would hate.
I'll choose to not take that too literally, sir. But Kamen Rider goes out back, comes with like a good hearty looking coffee. He goes, there you go. Tourists do love that kind of thing, but I like to make a little shape with the foam. So there you go.
Oh.
And there's just a little kind of kite symbol he's made in the foam for you.
I appreciate your integrity. Thank you. This is quite nice.
Of course. Anything else I can do for you folks?
Well, if you're offering, I did have a quick question. There's a mighty big hole out there. People seemed a bit nervous about it. I'd heard tell of some kind of battle saint on the loose. How do you figure that factors into this place?
He gives you a cheerful smile and he kind of leans in. Before he leans in, he goes, "Oh yeah, the warden going walkabout. Oh yes, it's got everyone here up in arms because after all, what happens if the Lingers invade tomorrow and we got nothing here to protect us?" And then he kind of
Nim
leans
shifts
in.
uncomfortably at the comment about the Lingers.
I was like, between you and me, it's about time this town had a little bit of excitement. I've been long enough here to remember the days when the old watch retired. Overnight, we had this lot, a bunch of aimless fellas, old veterans who weren't being paid to sit around anymore watching for an enemy. Right heap of trouble that was. Now they've got something to talk about. Get some off my back, So, what can I get you, sir?
Oh, I think Frank glances over, sees what Dr. Harrow has. I'll take one of those. That looks quite good. And how much excitement has been injected by this incident? My colleagues and I here, we're going to be in town for a little bit. We're mighty curious about the history and the specifically that pertaining to the war and to kind of the gods worshipped around here. We just trying to get ourselves a better understanding of it, and this is not every day that a older bit of technology like this just kind of waltzes off.
Well, to answer the first part of your question, what kind of excitement? Just keep an eye out for Tommy and his boys next time you see him. They're going on patrols. He's marshaled up a proper militia to keep us safe in case the warden attacks. So yeah, lots of young lads and old lads marching up and down with rifles and shotguns, pretending they're some kind of proper Home Guard army. So that's that kind of excitement. As for history of this place, you see Peter there, tweedy fella sitting by himself. If you want to learn about the history, you could do worse than having a chat to him. I'm sure he'd appreciate the company. He doesn't have a lot of friends up here. What was the last part of your question, sir?
Oh, I figure you've given me enough to start with right there. Just the coffee, I suppose.
That'll do it then. And here's a kite for you as well.
He takes it and takes a sip and says, "Well, that tastes a sight better than the ones. Well, I got a little bit of a blessing myself, so this will perk me right back up."
The old sods, they complain about gentrification over here, but it is a good coffee, isn't it? And he just makes one for himself quite happily and begins to sip it.
It is quite lovely. Are you a fan of black coffee?
Yeah. If I've got a long shift ahead of me, why do you ask?
A little chemist's trick. I've always wanted to spread it a bit more. If you have a customer who does not like black coffee, have you ever put salt in it?
I can't say I've ever tried that, no.
Now you'd be thinking, salt in coffee, what a strange thing to put in. No, I swear by this. A sprinkling of salt into black coffee, all it does is completely remove the bitterness. That's all it does. It creates a very delicious drink, no cream required. I'd recommend trying it sometime. It's I won't bore you with the scientific details of it, but it's really a fascinating little thing that I would recommend more people knew about.
I love that. Alex, I know you don't appreciate keeper generosity, but for that bit of real world knowledge, I'm very happy to give you advantage if you want to use this for a gather information role. Because
I'll take it. That was a real world fact. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I think Valentine looks very impressed. Oh, well, yeah, maybe I'll give that a go. What about any of the rest of you? Anyone else want a coffee? Sweet or savory?
The chair will say, "More coffee, please," and I would like salt in my coffee too.
I think at this point, yeah, Valentine is very happily serving up coffees, but definitely some of the old veterans are now kind of nudging each other, and you can hear a few chuckles and smirks at these out-of-town hipsters who've come to a pub and are just drinking coffee. But yeah, Valentine kind of quite happily serves you up and says, "So, what brings all of you to town anyhow? Sightseers?"
I think now is the point where I'm curious as a group if our approach to cautious investigation means we have a cover story or if we're just kind of flying under the radar.
I have an idea for a cover story.
I'm terrified.
Let's hear.
I think just visiting. Got some family in the area, at least according to my mother. I don't suppose you know anyone with the last name Greaves?
Is this a use of your move? Or is this just a bluff? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yep. Oh, and I just opened Visual Studio Code. Hang on. Okay. Yeah, let's
You have many
try
phases?
that move because technically, Nora should not be drawing any attention to her past because that will not end well for her. So, yeah. I think let's false persona. Okay, let's say that the persona is a sister that Nora doesn't have, but who did like stay. Unlike Nora, stayed with the branch of the military that they were in. Let's give her a name. Annalise.
Annalise Greaves, is that the name?
Yeah, sure. Annalise Greaves.
Lovely. Okay, please roll presence as a reminder for everyone. On a hit, your deception is convincing enough to avoid unwanted attention. On a 10 plus, your performance literally brings Annalise to life, who becomes a new side character. On a miss, the new side character does come to life, but they believe you must die in order for them to live.
Which works. Okay, so that's +1. It's 11.
One of those rare times I was rooting for a miss, but no, an 11 is perfect. Valentine just kind of frowns and says, "Oh, are you Annalise Greaves' sister? Yeah. No, she was out here with the watch when they were serving. Her cottage is just up on the cliff road. Just follow it around out of town. It's one of the last houses before you get to the sea. Ah, she said she had a sister. Ah, I should be looking forward to seeing you."
I think Nora kind of trying to hide that she's taken aback, like she did not expect there to actually be anyone here. So that's an opportunity to have something come back to bite her later.
Yeah, we're here for some family, and also I'm actually a member of the Greater Glottage Historical Preservation Society, and this place is of historical importance, and wanted to get a lay of it, get an understanding of it myself.
Sorry, Vitria picks up on that and says, "Yes, we're all from the Glottage Society, and I'm the historical architecture expert of our little group. And unfortunately," and she picks up a bit of the crumbly mortar and says, "Think your tower is sick."
Oh, yeah, it's an old building, and I don't know about you, but it's a licensed pub, so we don't really have the money to do a lot of renovations. But like I said, historians, yeah, this is the perfect town for you. Whole lot of history, ancient and modern. It's a fascinating place. So I'd talk to Peter, the historian, if I were you, and I would watch out for whips. That's the Welkin Historical Interest Preservation Society. Like I said, a lot of old folks around here maybe have a bit too much time on their hands, and the whips do take their duties very seriously. So just be careful you don't damage any monuments or landmarks while you're in town.
Fortunately, I think improper preservation of historically sanctified Slag King architecture might have done more damage to this building than any inconsiderate renovations ever could.
Valentine he gives you the long stare of a man who doesn't have a lot of money and very much suspects that you're kind of ramping up to try and sell him something. And he goes,
Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'm an expert in the old ways of the Slag King. Will you tell us a little bit more about your charming town? If I fix your tower, it needs its rights renewed, you see.
Yeah, that's very kind, but I don't really want to get a god interfering in my pub, you know. I was hearing on the radio there's this place down in Glottage, the Skyward Sprawl. The old SK got involved there, and apparently it ended up going a bit wild. So thank you for the offer. Obviously, if there's anything I can tell you about the town's history, I'd be glad to help. But if you could just keep your hands off my property, that would be very much appreciated.
I think Richie is going to do it anyway, but when nobody's looking.
Incredible. Please just let me know whenever you want to do that. Yeah, he's very open to any way that he can help you.
I think I'm going to ask him if there's like a restroom, and hopefully it's down in the cellar or something, so that I can sneak down and draw the marks. Because I think this building might have something to tell us. I have to renew it first, though. It's terribly thick and crumbling.
Yeah, it's a busy pub, as we've said. He's got lots of work to be doing, and you can certainly see a trapdoor leading down to some kind of cellar close to the bar counter. So if anyone else wishes to distract him, or if you just want to bide your time, I'm certain you could find an opportunity to try and sneak down there.
Well, at the very least, Dr. Harrow gives a clears his throat a little bit to get Valentine's attention again. And just kind of looking at his cup, he says,
Yes, as interests in the historical society, as my comrades have mentioned, I am most myself intrigued by the quaint tenor of the town. Obviously, lively atmosphere in here with your patrons discussing all sorts of different opinions, which is healthy to any town, I suppose. But is there a would you say that this is a quarrelsome place, or is it steadfast?
I mean, a place can be both steadfast and quarrelsome, can't it?
I do
A
suppose
lot
it
of
could.
people around here call themselves patriots, which means a lot of people who are pretty damn honourable, pretty damn steadfast, but then a lot of folks who joined up looking for a fight, and now that fight's nowhere to be seen.
Looking for a fight, I see. And these people who wish for a fight, do they have names?
Like I said, Tommy's the one you want to keep an eye out for, him and his militia who've formed up to try and keep us safe against the warden. There's maybe
I see.
maybe a dozen of them now. Youngsters, 2 old silver-haired veterans. They're the ones you've got to watch out for, especially when they've had a drink or two.
Well, yes, indeed. That seems to be the case with many professions. Thank you. I will. I am most intrigued to know about your town's history with the ancient cultures. I am interested in antiquity. I've seen a lot of things on my way in here about old war machines, vehicles, wonderful commemorative plaques. But as I understand it, this was once a place where many great warrior tribes of these clifflands once wandered, and their cairns perhaps still remain. Is any of that history reflected here in Welkin's Vigil, or do you mostly focus on the modern era of war?
I'm just 1 second. Have a word with Peter. Buy him a drink. I'm sure he'll tell you anything you want to know about the ancient history of the town. Excuse me.
Thank you. I apologize.
He kind of turns away. Some of the old veterans are kind of rather loudly tapping their pint glasses on the counter. He rushes to go and serve them. Vitria, the way is open if you wish to sneak downstairs, but to check in with Nora and Frank, what are you doing right now? What's the approach?
I think he's like starting. There's like one of the flaps you have to like raise in order to get out from behind the counter, and he's going to go and lift that in order to go collect those empty pints and refill them behind the counter. When Frank, like, because he has a sixth sense for these things, he sees them empty first and has already gone over and it like makes some polite conversation like, oh, hey there, I see your glass is empty. You know, I'll buy you one. I'll buy you your next round. How about that? And Frank like has already scooped up their glasses and is like actively bringing them back by the time our bartender has even begun to try to get out from behind the bar. And he sets them down there for him and says, these next 4 are on me.
You are so adept at being a bartender that I think Valentine kind of almost turns to give you an instruction, just instinctively assuming that you work for him before he does a quick double take and goes, "Oh, sure, much obliged." And the old veterans kind of raise a snaggletooth cheer at the sound of you offering to buy them around.
Yeah, I think to the point of almost thinking that Frank works there. As he begins to fill the glasses, I think Frank does actually lift the flap, go behind the counter, grab a rag, and begins to wipe down the counters, as would be a supporting role here.
Incredible. And Nora, what do you do?
Nora is going to ask Valentine if there is a phone and a phone book that she could use. Figure I should probably call ahead, seeing as she kind of gestures to where the rain is lashing against the door, seeing as we're going to be stuck here for a while.
Yeah, sure, I can help you with that. And again, in kind of remarkable contrast to System Malreward, the phone book that he takes out is very new and neatly branded. It's kind of a local phone book that has all manner of illustrated tourist destinations marked on it. And the phone that he pulls out is actually cordless. And at that, some of the veterans, kind of the ones that were ranting about the internet, let out a kind of hissing boo. And Valentine goes, "Ah! Keep it down." There you go. First call's free. If you make another call, I just ask that you buy another drink to keep it moving around, all right?
Nora kind of pages through the phone book, locates Annalise's phone number, and after a few moments, during which Frank has probably cleaned just the entire bar, she finally starts dialing.
I think there's it rings and rings and rings, and for a moment you might think that it had rung out, but then there's a click, and you hear a voice that is not old precisely, but certainly aged. A very tired voice, and someone who says, "Hello? Hello?
Hey, Annie. Been a while.
Nora? Nora, is that you?"
Who else? Definitely isn't Link. Ended up in your town, apparently. Wondering if I could drop by.
You can hear the tears coming to her eyes. She goes, "You're here. At long last. My little sister's here. Yeah. Yeah. Come right away. Come find me. Do you know where I live? Do you have the address?"
Nora looks down at the phone book. Yeah, 32 Pine Grove, right?
That's it. Not that there's any damn pines in this part of the country, but I guess they thought the name was cute. Yeah, Nora, come. Please come. Do you want dinner? Do you want to stay the night? Just let me know.
Nora kind of swallows like, I'm with some friends at the moment. I don't know if you have room for all of us. We'll look for a place to stay, but I'll come by when the rain lets up a little bit.
Of course. I'll be waiting. And you can tell by the tone in her voice, she doesn't want you to know that she's disappointed that you won't be staying. She says, "Of course, I can't wait, Nora. Thank you for telling me you're here."
Oh, and I found out you were here. Couldn't do anything else. We're kind of stuck in the pub that's down by the docks. But You'll know our car when you see it. It's fairly obvious. She's thinking about both the shattered windshield and the van that has definitely seen better days.
There's, I bet there's a story behind that. You always did have the best stories. All right, I'm going to get things tidy, okay? Because I don't want to see, don't want you seeing the house when it's such a mess. But looking forward to this, Nora. Really looking forward to it.
Too. I'll see you soon.
Just a click as she hangs up, and I think because you invented this woman out of whole cloth, I think some part of you knows that she is humming to herself happily and joyfully as she gets the house ready for your coming. I think Vitria, let's check in with you. So very much, even with Frank's help, Valentine is very busy behind the bar. The trapdoor is very much open to the cellar if you want to use it. If you are going to go down and descend and attempt to call upon the Slag King, seeing as that's going to be dangerous in itself, likely a revelation move unless you have something in particular in mind, I'm happy to let you get into the cellar without there needing to be some kind of sneaking check involved.
To my Crucible of Change move. Because Vitria has an ulterior motive, which that she thinks that if she can heal the building, which is quite ill and ailing, because it hasn't had its sacrificial, since it was built, its link to the Slag King has faded with time, and that's why it's sort of starting to crumble. But so that might make the Preservation Society more amenable, but ultimately Vitria is kind of needs to renew her link with the Slag King to protect her. Basically, she wants to ask for the Slag King's protection from the Skyward Sprawl. Now that she's used the mark, it's starting to damage her. So I'm basically going to sort of try and use it to heal myself, while also healing the building by drawing on the old magic of the Slag King, a beast of earth and fire and molten metal.
Awesome. Well, I think, yeah, you descend down the cellar steps. There's maybe just a few drips because, as you correctly said, the building is starting to come apart a little bit. It's dark, but from the shaft of light coming down from the pub, you can make out the shapes of the various wine bottles, beer kegs down here, and a small space in the center of the room where you certainly can call upon the Slag King if you wish.
Think I'm going to use the sigil that I found in the Skyward Sprawl on a piece of concrete, which is an ancient sigil of the Slag King that looks disturbingly like a helm, like a mouth eating with a bunch of figures falling into it, but very stylized. And I'm going to carve it on the floor and sit in the middle of the prayer mark and do my ritual.
That's very good. Was that you marking an item? Or was that just for flavor?
I'd like to try and give myself advantage by marking my lump of concrete. It's not the lump of concrete per se, but the sigil that was on the lump of concrete.
I think it's a good idea because what I was going to say is as you take your position on the floor, you look up into the darkness between the two massive kegs, very much taking on the shape of a doorway. And for a moment, as you said that the Skyward Sprawl is in its own way still after you, you just see your father there, pale and trembling, as he whispers, "Come find me, Vitria. Come find me." And you blink, and he's gone. So I am going to say that goes from advantage to a flat roll again, please.
So basically, I'm going to roll. I'm going to sit in the middle of the sigil, and I have to use blood. So with I'm going to once again touch the palms of my hands and draw on the cardinal points of the prayer mark with blood mixed with mortar to for the ink, and start chanting, and it's in a sort of old language that is like a sort of liturgical language of the faith of the Slag King that's sort of Ancient One of flesh and change, bring back what crumbles, make anew. Bolster your marks, reverse cruel age, new life in stone, steadfast and true. And then just like calls up the old form of the hungry earth and fire of the Slag King. So I'm just gonna, and I think if it's with communion, that would just be a flat roll +0.
Perfect. As a reminder for everyone, on a 12 plus, Vitria gets the effect that she wants and also gets to unmark a box on the safety track. On a 10 plus, Vitria gets a positive effect. On a 7 to 9, there is going to be a complication. And on a miss, the keeper reacts and Vitria marks an additional unsafe. And I do believe her unsafe is looking pretty ropey right now.
I'm getting full up. Let's see how I go. It's time to heal myself. Oh wow, that's really gnarly. I got a 6.
6 is a miss. Alrighty, let's come back to that. Let's from the darkness growing all around Vitria, let's go to Dr. Nimharrow. Are you approaching the historian, or do you have another plan in mind?
I know, I was thinking about approaching the historian.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine you come closer and closer to this man who's just kind of licking his finger and fastidiously turning his book. He glances up at you. You see the tweed jacket with the elbow patches. Now that you're closer, you can also make out the beady and rather curious eyes hidden behind green tinted spectacles, and the rather obvious tobacco stains, suggesting that he spends a lot of time chewing on a pipe. He looks rather sickly, as if he spent a lifetime amongst his books avoiding sunlight. He goes, if you want to take the stools, please do. I only need the one.
Indeed. Well, thank you. I shall. He slides down to the stool and says, "But I was coming over because Peter, yes, the local historian."
The snap of his book closing is like it's elation. It's like a round of hearty applause as he beams and puts it down and says, "A historian indeed. Did you have questions for me about the town? Perhaps a guided tour, yes?"
Perhaps yes, but the first question I wish you is, may I buy you a drink?
He's barely taken a sip out of his one, and he kind of blanches, looking a bit embarrassed, as the veterans all around are sinking their own drinks, and says, I'm going slow, but that's very kind. Honestly, I should be glad for the company if you wish to sit and talk with me.
I would be delighted. I am very interested in the historical intricacies of your town.
Yes, well, it is a fascinating town. Obviously, a lot of military history, but a lot of ancient history as well. Was there anything in particular you were interested in hearing about?
Yes, if it were not for this awful blustering gale, I would absolutely be happy to go walking about and receive a tour. But my associates and I, we are historical societal members from Glottage, and I am fascinated with Welkin's Vigil. I would love to know more about the more ancient past of the warrior tribes that once roamed these lands. I have seen very little of that in my time thus far, but I am very intrigued.
Very nice. Let's go for a bit of gather information on this, because I think you get some interesting clues out of this. Obviously, presence would be lovely, but as you are posing as a fellow academic, I'd be very happy for you to play that out as a bit more of an academic gathering of information from him.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I feel like at least the current this is presence. I think at the current, like, just it's mostly social. Can I do I get that free advantage you mentioned on my next roll because of my coffee facts?
Can you justify how Valentine gets involved across the room to help you out here?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll save that. I'll save that for a future thing. Yeah, I'll save it.
Okay.
All right. You said plus presence. I don't think that's there he went. Well, it's not a good number. That's a 6.
A 6 is a miss. Let's come back to that. We're really racking up the misses today.
Yeah, I actually have an idea for a possible misreaction.
Okay,
But
go
we
for
can
it.
come back. I was just gonna say, what if just like in my over eagerness of like playing this angle, I end up like knocking over his drink and it spills all over his book and like on him, like it's just a full social faux pas kind of situation. I don't know. That was what popped into my head, but I'm open to whatever.
I love that. I think just absolutely his stout goes flying across him. And perhaps he wouldn't be offended if it wasn't for the mocking laughter of the veterans all around him, who
Oh yeah, that's so much
clearly
worse.
have just been waiting for this to happen. And he's just kind of mopping himself up and he goes, oh dear, it's very cold.
I am so sorry. Oh yes.
Yeah, he's getting up and like grabbing like a table napkin, like dabbing it like at him in the middle of the room. It's not at all helping the embarrassment, I assume. It's just, but Nim is immediately like flustered and
I apologize.
he's mumbling and yeah.
No, it's quite right. It's quite right. I just need to go home and change. And he's bright beetroot red as everyone continues to laugh. Excuse me. Thank you for the drink. Not and he just scuttles away through the crowd.
Shit.
Are you keeping that result, or are you going to mark a verse?
I'm absolutely keeping that result. That's
Okay,
that's,
okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, I honestly like that.
I mean,
Okay.
sometimes you got to narrate it either way, but
Poor guy stormed off into a storm.
yeah. I mean,
Okay,
at least it'll clean the drink off his lap.
Frank and Nora, is there anything you want to do? Because I do have a fun idea, I think, for Vitria's 6, which may have repercussions for all of you. So if there's any...
I'll just give the positional information for Frank in the scene. I think a drink has been spilled. A man has not stormed off, but embarrassedly hurried off. And Frank, with a wet towel slung over one shoulder, a low apron, he has fully integrated into working here without any paperwork being signed. He rocks up over to Dr. Harrow's table and almost in a way that he hasn't addressed Dr. Harrow before, he addresses him as if he worked here, not as if he like knew Dr. Harrow. And he's like, something wrong at this table? Looks like you got a mess here to clean up. I'll help you here with that. But anything I can get you?
There is a look of confusion on Nim's face for a moment, but then it clicks into, I mean, because he was so flustered, but it clicks into place what you're going for. And he goes, "Oh, more napkins, please."
Course. Got plenty back behind the counter. Be right there. And he like wipes down with his rag and then slaps it back over his shoulder and goes and fetches you some napkins.
Very nice. Nora, anything from you? Or are you just hanging up from talking to your imaginary sister, who is now very real?
I mean, I joked about it, but I think as Nora hangs up, she does like feel her hair start, like the hair on her arms is like standing on end. And she's like, okay, something weird is going on. Not in the, okay, just I guess for the recording, I wrote Nora feeling her hair stand on end. Oh, Vitria must be risking tetanus again. So maybe that thought passes her mind, but mostly it's something's going on.
Absolutely. I think that maybe the Watcher is perhaps speaking to you of something very dramatic happening underneath, because Vitria, you said your ambition was to try and heal the tower. We said, of course, that this pub is a converted guard tower. And I think perhaps what happens is you succeed rather too well. The tower remembers what it was, a bastion with cannon, a last guard post against the invaders from the north. And it just reshapes itself. The portraits on the walls just rattling and falling down, the bars of the pub uprooting as it forms its very own organic stone cannons upon the battlements, as it becomes the tower it used to be. And I think as everyone kind of rushes out into the storm, screaming, the plaster falling down around their heads, they hear the sound of gunfire from the militia who are stationed at the end of the town. And then you watch as through the rain and the wind, the sleepless warden comes marching past all of you, ignoring the scattering humans entirely, as it ducks into the tower and takes up residence in its very own new roost.
I want to figure out how to keep that. I have an idea. So basically, I do want to write a verse because I have an appropriate verse, but I also kind of want to. I have a way, I think, of keeping most of that, if that's okay. Like, because that's too
Please.
awesome to turn down. But basically, I'm gonna mark my ashen circle, which is narrate a flashback to when you first heard the scratching of the sacrifice in the walls. But I think that basically to push it up to 7 to 9, and the benefit, the effect, which means I get an effect and a complication, and the effect is going to be that I remove the crust of my floors is burned away, and I'm going to remove a physical condition. And the way that I'm going to do that is that things get a bit Junji Ito, and all of the gaps between the bricks start like these faces of all the dead people who've been sacrificed to the town, to the war, to these stones start sort of writhing out like viscously from between the bricks and distorted. And one of them is Vitria's father saying, "Find me!" And she just screams like, "But and like pushes them all away and just falls like unconscious, but basically has completely forgotten what happened to her father in the process. Like that's what it took. So she's forgotten, and that's why the condition is going to be cleared. But I think that immediately segs into the fact that after she asked the bellhop to take her father, the thing she's never told another living soul is that every night since then, she puts on in-ear plugs, she takes sleeping tablets, she does anything she can because her father's never been far from her, and that whisper of "find me" has never left her, and the bellhop simply brought it out into the day. So now, until this moment, she's never been free of it. And now she only is because she's completely expunged the memory, and the Slag King has purged the memory from her mind.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's so cool. So just to check, you wanted to keep the warden has taken up residence in the tower, did you?
Okay, yeah, so the effect I'm going to take is the effect ends at a dangerous time, and the dangerous time is too late, which accounts for what you just said, John, which is that it just keeps healing until it's like it remembers. So that still happens, but that's the effect.
Perfect. Okay, well then, yeah, we will pick up maybe a few minutes later, everyone rushing, there are screams, all of you staggering out into the rain as you watch this great iron figure hauling its club arm, stoops into the tower and vanishes. Maybe a moment later, you see the golden lights of headlights as 3 vans just rush up beside you. Men jump out, still holding their rifles and shotguns, and stare at the tower that has now been occupied. The leader of the militia, he's wearing a chore jacket, black bandana, and he's got a very, very big bushy beard, clutching a shotgun over his shoulder. He just steps out, stares at the tower. Valentine, who's kind of distraught, something. It's in my pub. Tommy, get in there, do something. Tommy Bollinger, patriot and leader of the Welkin citizen militia, just softly chewing something. He stares at the doorway for a second, and then he looks back to the militiamen and says, "I think we've had this saint wrong, boys. It's a sign from the warden. war is coming, and it wants all of us to be ready. So, it's taken the third watch so that it can keep watch. It's showing us all of us need to be ready. We need to turn this town into the first line of defense against those Linger filth. It's showing us the way, boys. Well, what your answer going to be? And from both the militiamen, but also just a certain contingent of the shivering veterans who are inside the pub, they do let out kind of a, "Ah!" raising their fists and or their rifles to the sky. Valentine just goes, "You bloody idiot, Tommy. That's my pub. That's my pub. It's taken over my pub, and you were telling me you're just going to stand there and let it." Tommy just shoves him down into the mud and says, "Your pub's been commissioned, Valentine. Go home. We've got it from here." He turns and strides away, yelling out to his men to start gathering sandbags, forming up some defensive lines around the commissioned pub. The four of you, Vitria having come out rather later than everyone else, are out here in the rain. The Sleepless Warden is indeed inside the tower. The militia all around you. Valentine, kind of shivering in the mud, is next to you. Over to you.
Frank will help Valentine up out of the muck, and still having the towel over his shoulder, although in the rain it's starting to wash off already anyway, he bends down and kind of, brushes down his pants, brushes off the muck where it's started to glue to him, and says, "Oh, I'm right sorry about that. They had no right to do that to you. I'm wholeheartely with you on this. This is maybe some act of some god, but it is not some sign of what's to come. It's merely a rude interruption to your business."
Yeah. Do any of you know what you're meant to do if a saint takes over your building? I mean, there's got to be forms I can fill out, right? I can get, maybe someone's going to come. Maybe someone's going to come and help me.
Does your
Well-
insurance cover acts of gods?
I don't think so, no.
I think Frank
my
leans in.
insurance is with a lucky lad, and he's a little bit dodgy around that kind of thing. So
Frank leans up to Valentine and kind of conspiratorially, "Well, if it's between just the two of us, we're not here just on historical society business." And Frank reaches in and pulls out. Do we have like some kind of identification for the organization we're with?
I can't
We'd
remember it's come up, but
established-
you can do, yeah.
I think we kind of
James.
established we have little flip open FBI style badges because I think we might have used them at some point in
Yeah.
the past.
I guess the question, Frank did officially sign on, so he would have one of his own. Yeah, Frank is going to briefly open just long enough for you to catch kind of the initials of the organization, and then close the badge and slide it back in his coat. "This is actually the exact kind of thing that we deal with when we're here on business, and I suppose we could be here on business if you require some assistance."
Yeah, look, as long as this doesn't get any more gods involved, because I've had enough of that, then yeah, if there's any help you can give me, I'd be grateful.
Well, excellent. If you given the historical importance of your building, I'm a bit concerned that, well, with this transformation, this might be deemed a condoned affair. This residence of being taken root. If we can keep some of the local historical society off of our back, then maybe something we can do. But I'm a bit worried. I don't want to ruffle any feathers with these actions taken here. When you ruffle feathers while you're trying to accomplish a job, things tend to get a bit beyond the scope.
I think he would definitely take that as he is there, kind of covered in mud, looking at his pub, which has very suddenly and unexpectedly been seized by a divine entity. He definitely takes your kind of hedging as an indication that maybe there's nothing you can do, and he just, yeah, figures you don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm gonna go home and get drunk, okay? Nice meeting all of you. Glad you enjoyed your coffees. Kind of turns and just begins to shuffle away up the hill through the town away from you all.
Well, it was. Thanks for the coffee. We'll do our best. We will do our best, right?
I mean, we usually do. Nora's gonna turn to Vitria. So, Princess, care to explain?
I had to renew my relationship with the Slag King, and the Slag King gave me a present that was more than I asked for, and she looks a bit cagey.
Uh-huh.
Buildings restored. Ta-da!
We all agree this is a bad thing, though, right? We can
Yes.
get behind
yes,
that.
Yes.
Okay.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted
yes,
to. I was just
yes.
trying to be familiar. Sometimes things like this happen, and we're like, "No, this is great," and I just wanted to be sure.
This is bad. This is just bad.
On the bright side, at least we know where the saint is now.
Given the sank of a fortified bunker does feel like the middle of the cloud, if that's the silver lining, though.
Yeah.
Any of you know what we should do next?
Hmm.
An incident report form to fill out.
Yes, you should do that, Vitria. You should do that.
It's then she does the kind of walk of shame back to the van to get her incident report form.
This is not looking good.
Well, cheer up. It could be worse. It could be raining. That's a joke, you see, because it already is.
Well, if push comes to shove, he pats the elixir of concrete and metal dissolving like chemicals that he has in his jacket. He says, I have contingencies.
For now, it might be good of us to find a place for everyone here to stay for the night. We'll hunker down, plot our next move.
Yes, I think that is a good idea. I am dreadfully tired and would like to not be sodden.
I know a place we could stay for a little while at least. And she has a telephone, so we could see if there are any hotels with rooms open.
Anywhere out of the rain would be lovely.
That is
Frank, looking over at our Dr. Hare and I shared car. Staying in the car is not probably going to keep the rain out.
no.
Imagine
No.
it's like half filled with water already.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What, like the car is hermetically sealed and does not.
There's like a crank wheel to open the door.
We said it, so it's canon. Yeah, no, it's got to be sealed, obviously, to be warded against gods. You've got to remember. So
Yes,
gaseous
yes.
gods couldn't get in if you don't have a proper seal around the car doors.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call them overpressure systems on tanks. Like you create negative pressure so that you can't have a gas attack against the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for Dr. Nim, it's more of about an internal hazard than external hazard situation. Yeah, I think that he'll just very tiredly just nod with everything that's being said, before kind of like glancing around the immediate area and just be like, we simply cannot burn down another hotel.
I think that's the perfect wham line to kind of to fade out on. All four of you, having said you were going to take this assignment more cautiously, standing in the rain, looking at this fortified bunker, the sleepless warden maybe just visible upon the battlements, its great arched shape, staring out to sea, 1 foot, massive foot perched on the cannons, as the four of you turn and begin to trudge up the hill to the house of Nora's mysterious contact. Yeah, let's leave it there. Fantastic, folks, as always. Okay, let's do some XP-ing. I'll start on the right. David, how did Frank do today? Obviously you did amazingly at helping the community with their empty glasses.
Yeah, I think, did you engage with the community for sure? Did you engage with the god, angel, or other divine manifestation for sure? Were you vulnerable with someone? I did have a bit of a moment with Dr. Harrow during the journey scene, but I feel like Dr. Harrow might have been more open than Frank was, but I don't know.
I'd say that, I mean, you mentioned that it was the nicest compliment you've ever gotten. That's pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, I really like that. And I loved the conversation you had just to get way ahead of the stars and wishes about the theorizing about the universe. I thought that was fantastic from both of you. So yeah, please take it. So
Okay,
3.
that's 3.
Lovely. James, how did Victory do?
Definitely engaged with the god angel or other divine manifestation by spectacularly fucking up. And I also talked quite a lot about buildings and the need to restore them. But unfortunately, the Psy King takes the idea of historical architecture restoration a little bit too literally. It's not the same as the Skyward Scroll, you see, because it's taking it back to its original template. So
Exactly
it's
how many citations is Vitri about to get?
Well, I mean, I'm going to debate that it's in fact the true essence of historical restoration. And I did talk about the marvelous nature of architecture as well in my rights. So I'm going to say 3.
3 sounds good to me.
I'm going to use one of them to unmark one of my safe boxes so I don't turn into a building and die.
Valid. Perfect. Thank you. And Dr. Nim, how did he do?
Let's see. So, I mean, I was there in the scene, so that counts as engaging with a divine manifestation, god angel. I was there, present with it, so I guess that counts, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think Frank took it, so yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. I did deliver a monologue about the nature of gods and a little bit about, futility of powers. I mean, the whole monologue about the nature of just everything and what role gods play in that. And on the same line with, did you struggle with your personal faith? I was subtle, like I was alluding to it with the comment about like how like at their smallest form, like basically the gods of the chemical convocation, they're like the all-encompassing building blocks of everything, but they're just gods in a glass tube essentially. And it's like it was like this kind of like this note of like they are basically everything, but they are so kind of small, and I wish they weren't.
Yeah, I thought that was perfect, and that was such an interesting angle in the world. So 100% please take it, and I think that should take you to an advancement. Lovely. And Nora.
Did you engage with God Angel and the Divine Manifestation? Yes, the same one that everyone else did. I'm going to skip ahead. And use the assignment to pursue personal interests, because Nora suddenly has a sister. So, yeah, she went and called her sister instead of collecting relevant information.
There's not much more of a personal interest than a sudden family member.
I mean, later, something to talk about later. I don't know if that little discussion about how the engine gods know that Nora's not mad at them counts as a monologue about the nature of gods. Probably not.
I'm gonna leave this one to you. I think you know in your heart whether or not you think that's a. So if you reckon that counts, yeah, that's fine. I think.
I feel like it was a throwaway line, so I'm gonna just take 2.
Fair enough. 2 it is. Lovely. Okay, so that's 1 advancement and looking very good for the rest of you. Very cool. Okay, stars and wishes. For me, just really lovely playing with you all again. Thank you always so much for being such awesome people to play with. In particular at the start, because we for the podcast we just put an episode out today, and I was definitely a bit scattered, and it helped me feel in the groove so much to hear all of you getting into your journey scenes and your dialogues so smoothly and so beautifully into character, and delving into some really interesting and fun characterization. I loved James bringing up the Relentless Rider. So yeah, that really helped me, and I really enjoyed it from all of you. I also really love how all of you dealt with the assignment, because honestly, as I started introducing it, I suddenly felt like I'd made a mistake with the Sleepless Warden, because it felt so similar to The Inevitable Hour in terms of another seaside town being menaced by a great towering figure of some kind. And then we went straight to the pub. And then the bartender in the assignment as written is a woman. I was like, oh no, but we had a female bartender in the Inevitable Hour as well. So I had to change him into a man. And then Nikki Valentine would have become Nick Valentine. And I was like, oh my God, I can't call someone Nick Valentine because that's a character from Fallout 4. So it felt like I was
the best character from Fallout 4.
The only good character, you might say. But yeah, I felt like I was sort of frantically trying to think, how do we make sure this doesn't feel too samey? But then instantly all of you started doing so many interesting things that changed things up. I loved Nora doing the made-up sister instantly. I think that's so interesting. I can't wait to see what happens when you actually meet her, because the move doesn't really go into, did this person exist before and they're just remembering you, or have they been conjured out of thin air? So I think exploring who this person is that has a really close familial relationship with you is going to be really interesting. And I loved Vitria immediately doing that with the building. James, I'm so grateful that you took the miss, because that just instantly changes up the traditional pub scene so much, and I'm really interested to see where it goes from here. And I love the dramatic irony of all of you saying at the start, time to be discreet and cautious, and that absolutely did not happen. So yeah, tons and tons of stars. And I'm also really glad that you all got to be together again, because I know we've been saying for a few sessions it had been scattered for quite a while. So yeah, tons of stars from me, and no wishes that I can think of. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad to be back off a little hiatus, and I will echo what James said in the chat, which is, I love that this system is so easy to pick up and get back into it after a hiatus. It's great. Really enjoyed Nora and Vitria's little journey scene preface to Welkin's Vigil, and especially the interaction between Frank and Nim on the walk into Hiram. That was a really great scene to role play out. I was actually very happy, John, so sorry to you as well for focusing more on the actual journey part of that. I actually, was really happy to indulge a little bit more of like the moving into that complex. That was a lot of fun. God, yeah, it started to James, absolutely, for like rolling the mist. That also just because of immediately, this is not something Vitria is going to live down, and I love leaning when you lean into that. So just, it's like she does this, and just someone just needs to look at her and be like, where in the bylaws is this? You tell me, Vitria, where in the bylaws is this covered? It wasn't a really in-game thing, but it was just mentioned. I was really tickled by the conclusion of the Lucky Lad insurance. I said this in the chat, but I thought, like, what is it? Just like you ask them if they'll cover something and they flip a coin and that determines whether or not it's covered. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed getting to see all of us together in the same location again, because we've had several sessions where we were off doing our own respective assignments. So getting to have the team back together is great. And star to you, Rhyme, for taking He of Many Faces as a fellow Watcher in the Wings player. Love that move. I use it so differently than how Nora uses it. I'm very interested by your like first go around with it. Like this kind of like setting up like a sister character. It was really cool and really dramatic. And then the phone call scene was very good. I don't know. There's a lot of great questions happening here. And I really like your interpretation of a follower of the Watcher in the Wings, because it's so different than like what I've played, and I like that a lot. It's really cool to see, started the system and started all of you as players. It's always really fun to just see how people individually interpret like a playbook or some aspect of the game's mechanics, because it's really flexible and it's just endlessly fun, and I can see why we replay these all the time. Wishes, yeah, I'm very interested to see where this confrontation is going to go. Like, because since we're so close to to triggering the confrontation, I'm fascinated by this this rival group, and I want to know how that's going to pan out. And on a broader scale, would love to do another confrontation with like another conspiracy with the gang, but we'll see. And yeah, just having a great time.
Yeah. My wish is actually immediately related to the stuff with Nora. The moment it's like, oh yeah, I may have just conjured a sister out of thin air, I'm like, okay, I am totally here for this. I'm so curious about how this might go, because there's to Alex's point a second ago, there's so many ways that can be interpreted. So I mean, big star for bringing that up and making that manifest. And then what a time to get an 11, like perfect timing to get that high roll, especially considering our crowd of sixes that were plaguing the rest of the session. I thought the dice really told a story this time. I did not expect to get struck by lightning today. That was fun. No, I don't know if I've ever had a character get struck by lightning before, so that's a fun change of pace, I guess. And I guarantee you, if an opportunity arises, we will bring back up that 3 whiskeys is how you deal with a lightning strike. I'm holding onto that nugget in my back pocket. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to sling it out there. But yeah, there's so many stars this session. I really love this particular threat. There's just something about it and the sort of slowly ramping fanaticism that emerges with some of the populace that I just find really a fun sandbox to play in. And having us immediately have the battle saint like take up residence in this tower and like have that happened. I thought that was just a really great move. And I loved Vitria teeing it up by accepting that miss. That's always a wonderful thing to see happen. So yeah, I just thought that especially the back half of this session, man, so many good things happened as we got settled into it. And of course, I loved the conversations in the first, but now that we're all together, it almost you forget how much more chaotic it can get when all 4 of us are there at the same time, because who's going to make the right or wrong decision that's going to spiral things out of control? You never can expect. So this time it was Vitria, and it was really fun to see that happen. So
yeah. Oh, I think David froze.
love that.
Stars, the contrast of, okay, Alex rolled a miss and Dr. Harrow spilled a drink all over a guy. Sure, fine. And then James rolls a miss and Vitria destroys the building, basically. It's just the contrast between those two was fun. The kite settler who just got struck by lightning and got up after a shot of whiskey was that is not how you treat a lightning strike. But that was great. And I guess going back to just when we got the assignment, just the idea that somehow our handler knew that Dr. Harrow and Frank were going to this building and left the assignment stuff there for them. Like, didn't even bother to stick around, just left the papers there. And that the Relentless Rider is a drama queen, and just, it's very good at listening to his cues. But also that somehow the messenger also found us just on a random road. Kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, so our handler, exactly how much does he know? I guess wishes. I mean, I wish I wasn't still recovering from being sick because I coughed a few times and I drowned you guys out, so I didn't hear some stuff. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how we, as like how our characters are going to be dealing with the saint in a tower now, and also how the militia is going to be causing problems, because that's sure to be interesting. And yeah, also like getting to see the rivals in play. Like, what did someone say last time? That they're like the most D&D party characters or something. Yeah. Just looking forward to seeing all of those confrontations.
I think for me, a huge star for creating a sister. Like that was just fantastic. I love that. I really, really love that. And I also know the stuff for Frank just becoming the waiter. Like that was also with no pause in between. Just like I just love that. And I also love that the Dr. Harry, like the journey scene and within the reset the facility, and that kind of evil religious demagogue Einstein monologue, which was kind of amazing, you know. It was like unified field theory meets kind of cult leader, which was kind of amazing. Yeah, and I just want to see, like, yeah, as the clock ticks up, well, I think I can create a conspiracy clue, which I might try and do, but also just seeing where we get to, and I just the irony of me never successfully communing with Slag King and creating another Skyward Scroll, but it's not, you see, because it's not uncontrolled growth. It's historical restoration, so it's fine. It's all fine. And Vitria didn't make a terrible, terrible mistake that is probably excommunicatory events. Yeah, no, it's all fine. It's gonna be fine. Everything's fine. And yeah, looking forward to it. Was great to play again, really, really good. And I love this group and I love all the characters. And I think it was a good choice to bring in the Sleepless Warden now as well, because it sort of suits our group as well.
Awesome, thank you. It's all fine. It's going to be fine. Everything's fine. That's a great motto. I've got one more wish which I remember, which is I'm really excited to see what you all do with your recurring side characters. Because as Alex said, we are getting to the part now where it's almost like you're going to start gathering your allies soon for the big confrontation. And your allies are one escaped ex-con, one teenager with some sentient mice, and a demonic bellhop. So really excited to see how these characters enter the narrative again. Anyway, thank you all. That was amazing as ever. I am going to stop recording now.